This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Welcome to the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us, where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground. Holy ground.
This is a journey into sound.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos.
Hey everybody, welcome. We are so excited to be back with you guys on the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm really excited because I have a very special guest. I have Sean McCormick here with me. He's a life coach. He is the host of a really great podcast called Optimal Performance. He's a founder, and he's also a dad and a family man and someone that loves health and wellness and all things that we love here. And also, most importantly, Sean, you can add this to your bio. He is the first of what will be a series of guests called Katie Talks with Smart Dudes. So Sean, congratulations. You are number one, and I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so excited. After having you on the Optimal Performance podcast and the way that we connected and vibe and kind of speak the same language, I was excited to appear. And I hope to set the bar ridiculously high for anyone and everyone who comes after me. So I hope, hope that's not a problem.
No. It is a competition. Like that is totally a competition. I'll be keeping you updated on our feedback. So yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Well, cool. So what I think, this is the kind of question that everyone gets asked to start, but I think it is important to lay some context. I mean, you and I met through a mutual friend. What I kind of discovered about you in our conversation, even though I was the one technically being interviewed, is that you seem to be doing something that I'm really passionate about, which is bridging the realm of technology, biohacking, modern science with a holistic, this whole phrase that's super blowing up right now, which I'm really excited about, is terrain theory, which is really the divine feminine. It's like, we are interconnected web of being, including nature. And so maybe just give us a little bit of background around your own journey and how you became a biohacking podcaster instead of something else that probably could have been a little safer bet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it was around the time of my Saturn return where I was totally out of place with what I was doing. I was 28 and in a committed relationship. I've been with my wife since we were 15. We've been committed and connected and learned a lot slowly over the years. And so I was in this place in my life where I was working at this really easy sales job, selling advertising for a radio station. And the lifestyle that goes around with as an account executive is salesy, hard charging, lots of happy hours, lots of shows. And my lifestyle was work hard, play hard. And play hard didn't mean go for hikes. Play hard meant drink a lot of whiskey Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night every week.
Wow.
And it was totally unfulfilling. I made good money and it was easy and I was good at it, but it wasn't filling my cup. And it was around that time when my wife and I guess we weren't quite married yet, we're talking about is this all there is? Is this life? Is this what life is? Is that we show up and we sit at a desk and we do our jobs and then we go home and live for the weekends? And we really took a hard look at whether or not that was what we wanted out of our lives. So we had all these ideas to open a juice shop in Hawaii or teach English in Thailand, and eventually settled on this idea to open float tank centers. For those of the listeners that don't know, sensory deprivation tanks, float tanks, isolation chambers, they're all the same thing. It's 10 inches of Epsom salt water, and you float for stress relief, pain relief, meditation, sleep. And I had done it years prior, and it was a really profound experience for me. I had an out-of-body experience, and it took me a long time to process that. But I threw the idea out to my lady at the time, and she said, okay. And she does not ever say okay to any of my crazy, ridiculous ideas.
Okay.
And in that moment, I mean, rightly so. She's a Taurus. She's very grounded. She's very logical. I'm a Pisces, water creature. And that changed my life trajectory in that moment. And during that time, I was, struggling with what I wanted my life to be and what my lifestyle was, but I was really sticking close to my meditation practice. And so I was open to understand that this moment was important, that something had shifted in my life in that moment. And so that started the process of figuring out how I was going to open this wellness center, which we grew then to 2 and then 3. And throughout that process of providing the service to people to go relax and recuperate and get in touch with themselves, then that just sent me down the rabbit hole into personal wellness, personal development, psychedelics, biohacking. And then I took over the Optimal Performance podcast, and then I got my life coaching certification. And fast forward now to, that was in 2011. And so now in 2022, that's how I spend my days, creating content, doing awesome podcasts with people like you, and really centering my whole life around wellness, around performance, around helping people become the best that they can possibly be in this body that they have right now. And so that is kind of the encapsulation of my process and my journey. And I wouldn't have done it any different.
Mm. I think our listeners will really resonate with this, because the thing that we do here besides this podcast is we have a health coaching certification platform. And what I continually tell people over and over and over again is that the way in which, because a lot of people that listen to the show or that do our program are like, I want to do that thing that you did, Sean, and I want my husband to do it, and I want to get on board, and I want to change my life. And how do I do it? Like, what do I need to do? And what are the nuts and bolts? And I'm like, step 1, get in touch with the thing that your heart is actually deeply longing for you, for your medicine. And then when you get stoked and passionate about that, it's just a law of nature that we naturally want to bring others into wellness. And I call it the healing vortex, right? And it's just like, I'm so turned on, tuned in, lit up, and everybody can feel it. And then they're like, here's my money, right? It's like energy brings more energy. So I think the courage to go for what you really want, it sounds like a story of that for you. And I'm sure it's like ups and downs and challenges, but how did you overcome the part of you that felt safe in the lifestyle you were living?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you said that, because there are things that we know in our heart are meaningful to us. And, as a life coach, what I do is work with all sorts of different people to get in touch with that. And how you spend your days and how you spend the hours in your days are going to either propel you forward in your purpose, in your mission, in your lifestyle, or they're going to dull, distract, and numb you from that true essence of who you are. And so it's not, I give this sort of analogy, like your best ideas come like in the shower, right?
Totally. 100%.
Yeah. And the reason why your best ideas come in the shower or on vacation is because you don't have your phone with you. You're not looking at your phone. You're being washed with negative ions from the water. You're grounding to a certain extent, and you're tapping into like the real you, the you that you are in your most genuine authenticity. And so if you're distracted all the time and you're, chasing this dopamine rush of, online purchases and Netflix and social media, or even your email, then it's tough to really get into touch with who you are and what you are here to do. And so habits have a lot to do with how you orient the direction in your life. And so, for me in my process, I decided that I need to just like get rid of a bunch of distractions. I needed to drink less during just overall. I needed to get my body attuned, get my energy flowing, doing chakra activations and meditations and yoga and mudras and journaling and all these things to like really get my body elevated to a higher vibration. And through that, you begin to align with your mission. And if your mission is to create art and sell it on Etsy, do it. If your thing is music, do it. If it's consulting or coaching, do it. You have to start somewhere. And when you are less distracted by these things that just zap your energy, they use up all your dopamine, and you just don't have any time for yourself and the things you love to do, it's really tough to connect with that stuff. And so for me, when that shift happened, when I realized, okay, this is kind of a turning point in my life. And I remember it like it was yesterday. We're driving in the car and I threw it out. She's like, yeah, okay, let's do it. From there, it was like, okay, I can either say yes to this and I can really give it a go. I can start doing research. I can start saving my money. I can start angling towards this goal, change my lifestyle, change some of my habits so that I have time and energy to devote to this, knowing full well that I was going to fail. I was going to fail flat out. And this is something else that I talk with my coaching clients is you're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. Things aren't going to work. And if you're elevated and attuned and the will is there to move through those little failures on the path toward whatever your thing is, or at least opening up to that thing, when it comes and you make these little mistakes, you can just say, okay, well, I knew that was going to happen. That was a mistake that was going to come to me. I'm just going to keep moving through it. And so will is such a massive thing. I come from the belief that love and free will govern the cosmos. And that essence of this free will has to be, you have to work on it because we're distracted. So what is it that I want to do today? What do I want to bring into the world? And like you said earlier, when you show up in service, when you show up to provide value to other people, your friends, your family, your lover, when you show up in service to that, people notice. And then this magnetic thing happens. And Katie, I know you're shaking your head because you know how this works, is you're there for others. And this thing happens where the more you give, the more you receive. And it just keeps going and keeps going. And you just can't be distracted. Your epiphany for the trajectory in your life is not going to come watching Netflix. It's not going to come. It's just not,
I can make the case for the divinity and everything, but I want to come back to that place of distraction because it's such a tender realm. And I think I think that the giving, that overflowing of your cup where you just naturally want to give and serve comes from actually having done it for yourself first. And then there's this like, oh my God, it's possible. And I'm the embodiment of it. And now it's actually effortless service in differentiating that from I'm serving it, because we have a lot of women listeners, right? And so it's like, women are like, I give all fucking day. I need to, you know what I mean? And so like the difference is it's this place of an overflowing rather than a giving to distract. And so there's so many ways we can distract. And I want to kind of go back to something that you said about dopamine and drinking. So drinking's one. We could, you mentioned online shopping, porn. I love the trailer park that is Twitter. Like I really get into that. I'm like, oh my God, this is so naughty. I love it. Everyone's so mad. It's like this. I was thinking, I like delete Twitter at least once a week and then I'll put it back on to like, just dive in again. And I'm thinking today I had the insight, Sean, of like, basically and I had a visualization, right? It popped into me in a meditation. Basically, Twitter is basically the same status update said different ways. And that status update is, this shit sucks, this shit sucks, this sucks, this sucks, it sucks. And I'm like, wow, what a powerful distraction. But going back to this idea of alcohol, one of the patterns that I've noticed in my life, and I think women do it too, but it tends to be a really strong pattern in men, where alcohol is a thing that is taken in. And I have this theory that it is such a beautiful way of numbing out the emotional body on men. And in the Native American tradition, and there was kind of a joke that went around about white male tears. Like, oh, I have a mug full of white male tears. It was like a couple years ago, and everyone kind of got on board and laughed. And I thought, wow, that's really ignorant, because in the Native American traditions, a man is considered grown when he trades in his baby tears for his man tears. And when a man cries those man tears, it's called a healing nectar and balm for the whole tribe. And I think about our men and the way in which there are so many, right, ways that we've drowned out men's tears. And I'm curious, in your own experience of letting go of alcohol as a coping mechanism, what was revealed to you through that? And what advice do you offer men, not that women don't use it as well, but that you offer specifically to men on coming out of that cloud, you know, and how that, if it has affected your personal power, right?
Yeah. It's going back to your point that you first started with around personal care, right? You know, one frame of thought is, you know, I deserve this glass of wine. I deserve this, you know, these 6 IPAs because I work hard, and no doubt you do. And we have been conditioned to believe that we sort of earn this release, alcohol as a way to sort of dull out and chill out and relax. And what real personal care is, that amplifies who we are, what real personal care is slowing down, because we know how to go fast. We know how to work hard and then numb out with alcohol. But real personal care is like having stillness and being alone and being okay, being bored, and nourishing ourselves through our habits. And so for many, many people, working their 9 to 5 on the way to the weekend is like, okay, cool, now I can like relax a little bit. And you're shortcutting that and really sort of like stopping that ability for stillness and time and reflection, which is where all the good stuff comes from inside of you. And for at least myself, I forgot what it was like to lay down on my pillow at night and let my mind wander and think about my life and think about my relationships and think about what my purpose was. Because if you're buzzed out, you know, if you're a couple of, you know, half a bottle of wine deep or a couple of beers deep, and you get to that place where you're just kind of sort of crashing out, we know that alcohol is basically a sedative. So it's not actually helping your sleep. It's really actually hurting your sleep. When you stop that or reduce that drastically, then you're able to get more in touch with your actual thoughts, with your actual emotions. And from that place, you get a greater understanding of who you are. Same thing with cannabis too. And, you know, I love both of these things, and I still partake, but rather than using it as this sort of automatic habit, that sort of stops that emotional reflection, that intellectual reflection for the self, especially in the evening time when things settle down. For me, it was a really important tool. I was thinking clear. I had more energy. I wasn't like waiting for Friday night anymore. I was choosing to orient my life 7 days a week and drive toward the things that I wanted to bring into the world that were more authentic to me. You know, float tank centers, flotation therapy really has nothing to do with partying. It's just not. and so I think that it's the type of thing that it takes a plan. And I've created models around this. I call it the full moon reset, in which case it's a half sidereal cycle from new moon to full moon, in which you stop any substances, bad foods, sugars, gluten, seed oils. You get off social media and you take a look at your habits. And in that 15 or 16 days where you're abstaining from all this stuff that's just like clouding you, you're able to confront some of the things that you don't like about yourself. And you're able to come up with these ideas that are more authentic to who you are. And so it's really essential to be able to have that stuff under control and know when to pick and choose and say, nah, I'm just going to hold off for a little bit and figure out what's going on inside of me.
Well, and I think it's so easy to hear, oh, like now I just replace these bad habits with meditation and float tanks and this and that. And I'm like full-time career of this stuff, and it's hard for me. And when I meditate, I've been meditating for 20 years, and yet every single time it's like a deeper onion layer, right? And when you get quiet, like there's a reason why people, when you put them in a room, they've done these experiments, I don't know if you've heard of this, where they put people in a room and they give them nothing. And it's so miserable that they choose to shock themselves, which in a prior experiment, they all report it is incredibly unappealing and hurts them, and they would prefer not to. And then later they choose this consciously to shock their body, something they had previously said was painful, because it's less painful than being alone with themselves, with their own mind. And, when we are quiet, if we've built up so much momentum, right, then it's like all of that stuff we haven't been looking at just rushes to the surface, and it can be really overwhelming, and so I just want to remind everyone, like, there's a reason we don't want to sit quietly. And yet if you can kind of, if it's too overwhelming, get support, but like if it's just like, okay, push through, at the other side of that, I've found, and it'll bring tears to my eyes over and over and over again, if I can be with that, what's on the other side is this divine, loving presence that I am looking for in all these other things, right? It's actually on the other side of that discomfort that might make me rather look at Twitter, which is basically shocking yourself in a room.
Yeah, right.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. So you mentioned dopamine, and I know you know so much about this, and I selfishly want to use this time to kind of know more. I haven't done this myself, but it's something I would like to do. I know that you are really into knowing what's going on in your neurochemistry and the use of nutraceuticals. And you even, I think, mentioned that you test for it. So I'm curious about that piece. I'm such a big fan of using technology to give us more light and insight on what's going on so we can upgrade. So maybe speak a little bit to like that and the realm, if that's the same as nutraceuticals that you then use to supplement for any loss or lack.
Yeah, what I'll point everybody to, which is the lowest hanging fruit, is something that's called the Braverman assessment. And you can go, I think you can see it in bravermanassessment.com.
Yeah, we'll put a link to it.
Yeah, it's I think it's like 100 questions or 150 questions. It takes a little bit of time to go through it. And what it does is, at the end of this assessment, this online quiz, it will tell you the 4 major neurochemicals and sort of where you're at with those.
So it's cognitive, it's not a biological exam.
Correct.
Oh, cool. So it can deduce just from what your experience is.
Yeah. And this thing was battle tested and developed over a long period of time to get it right. And it really takes a look at the 4 major neurochemicals, which is acetylcholine, which is like processing speed. This is, intellect, IQ. This is, how quickly you can make connections between things. The second is dopamine, which dopamine, we have to have these, right? And we're sort of going down this road of like dopamine's bad. We need it. It's it's the get up and go
Feels
neurochemical. Yeah, it's awesome. And then the third one is serotonin. And serotonin is thought of as like the feel-good neurochemical, and it is kind of, but what it more specifically, serotonin is about things are going to be okay chemical. So not just feel good, but feel like things are going to be good, which is there's a subtle distinction.
Super important thing for us all to have these days.
Right. And then the fourth is GABA. And what GABA does is that's basically the brakes on your thinking and your neurochemistry. So when you're drinking, you release a lot of GABA. Alcohol releases GABA, which is lowers inhibitions.
I didn't know that.
It helps you sort of like forget about the week, forget about the BS that you had to experience in the day. And so at the end of that assessment, it's going to tell you which neurochemicals you're dominant in and which ones you are deficient in. And so once you have that information around your own unique neurochemistry, that's without doing like the WAVI or doing like neurofeedback or doing like brain scans and tests. It'll give you sort of an idea of what your tendency is. So if like I myself, I'm dopamine dominant and I'm acetylcholine deficient, which sort of spells out this like extroverted, out there, motivated, active, loudmouth kind of, here we go, we're going to go for it, athletics and all that stuff. And acetylcholine is, this, I'm deficient in this fast calculation, left brain mathematics, sort of like number crunching. And once you know that, then you can seek out natural nootropics and nutraceuticals that will support those neurochemicals. And there's a wrinkle in there. So if you are dopamine dominant, and you take a dopamine enhancing, like my favorite is there's a company called Natural Stacks that makes brain food, and it's those four neurochemical supports. So there's dopamine, brain food, acetylcholine, brain food, etc. So what I find is even though I'm dopamine dominant, when I take dopamine brain food, I feel more like myself.
Wow. So it's okay to supplement all of them because these are natural things our brain needs. And maybe if we have them, we will be searching for these outside sources even less.
I absolutely. Right.
Which is the same as the spiritual. That's physical. And it's literally like an analog for what I just said spiritually.
Absolutely right. Yeah. I'm glad you made that observation because that's really important. And because I'm acetylcholine deficient, when I take acetylcholine brain food or when I take other sort of precursors to creating and releasing more acetylcholine in my brain, then I'm actually up-leveling this deficiency that I have. I'm pretty good GABA. I'm okay, like forgetting about stuff and just like moving on. I think meditation has really, really helped me over the years to do that. But I do get overwhelmed too, entrepreneur, podcast, father, all the stuff, life coach, got a bunch of people's problems I'm dealing with and helping them through every single day. So I can get overwhelmed. And so like in the afternoon, I might take serotonin brain food, or I might take a serotonin precursor that will help me sort of relax and move and enjoy the back half of my day more deeply. Now those are just 4 examples of how that Braverman assessment can help aid you in that. Most nootropics are like go-getter type nootropics, focus, mental clarity, memory recall, all that stuff. But there are also some really great nootropics that help, like if you're familiar with the term adaptogen, which is if you're too high, it will kind of bring you down.
We love those in Ayurveda.
Right, exactly. Ashwagandha, like name a couple of others.
Shatavari is a really common one for women.
Yeah, these sort of adaptogenic herbs can bring you up if you're low and bring you down if you're too high.
Another thing that I want to share with listeners and you too, Sean, is I'm definitely the GABA deficient type. And I had the pleasure of meeting Robin Williams' son, Zach, at an event that I was at. And he has a company called PYM, PYM. We don't have an affiliation. It's just a good thing to know. And, his dad really struggled with mental health issues. And this company is doing such incredible work with helping people to get GABA into their bodies, just one thing. And it's really challenging because GABA has a hard time crossing the blood-brain barrier. And so taurine is actually the precursor to GABA. And it's way more readily, I love PYM and I use it every day in the afternoons, like you were saying, but I've added taurine to that at night, and it has been so my nighty night routine as of late is PYM in the afternoon, taurine 1,000 milligrams before bed, with a whole freaking and sometimes 2 mangoes. And in India, mangoes were used for insomnia. I've dealt with insomnia my whole life, and it runs in my family. And it's interesting now that I hear you say it, because there's something in mango that is a precursor to serotonin. And so that's been really helpful, and these are all totally natural substances. And, I think this idea that we're going to be able to get it from our body alone in the modern era is just totally false. And that's what, Zach Williams really helped me see. It was like, it's not in our food anymore.
Right.
The B vitamins, the C vitamins, it's not the same as when our grandparents even were growing up. And so the supplement work is so spiritually profound, because when you get those levels right, it's like a veil clears.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And, because I'm so deeply in this world, I'm really careful to choose the right supplements that have either no proprietary blends. Typically I stay away from proprietary blends unless I know the company formulators or founders directly, because there can be a bunch of extra stuff, extra fillers and stimulants that your body doesn't want. So finding simple supplements, simple products in their purest form that are hopefully third-party lab tested with ingredient traceability to be able to say, okay, where did this come from? What quality was it? That's really, really important, because it's a hard thing to get right. But like you just said, once you get it right, it's like, oh my gosh, I've been missing this. This is me. Yeah. Oh my God.
And the interwoven nature of all these methodologies. And maybe that can kind of take us into this next place I want to go, which is, if you can take all the taurine and PYM and nutraceuticals in the world, and if your lifestyle sucks, and I really have a lot of compassion, I think it'd be these guys that work on Wall Street, or these women who are working these 80-hour work weeks. It's completely understandable that at the end of that, you're yeah, I'll be having a drink. The nervous system requires, and people are obviously different, and we have different neurotypes, but almost all nervous systems require a certain amount of time to re-regulate from an up rise or a down slope. And so, I have a lot of compassion for that. But what, for you right now, are the most powerful, quote, biohacks, which I call Ayurveda the original biohack? And I really believe you and I were probably if we believe in reincarnation, these Ayurveda people are Taoist masters, or, not that I'm a master, but do you know what I mean? If the Taoists were alive right now, they would be so stoked about, I'm sitting right now on an amethyst biomat, and I'm this shit is incredible. So I'm curious, I've got my things that I'm super digging right now. External technology, what is really working for you and why?
Yeah.
And we'll all, guys that are listening, we'll provide some link to Sean's website and links to these things.
Yeah. Well, so the way that I sort of think about biohacking is, and maybe we talked to, no, I don't think that we cover this idea of what goes in you, on you, and around you. And if you can figure out and modify and optimize those things, we're talking about creams to fabric softeners to aromas in your house to mold in your house. And unfortunately, we are exposed to so much stuff now. You're exposed to 5G. You're sitting next to your router, So for me, the biohacks that are sort of Ayurvedic facing, right, which is to get more grounded, get more in touch, get more aligned with the vibrations of the planet, are EMF protection devices, like really critical. So
Me too. I love that. I love that you said that.
It's huge. So like I resisted getting AirPods that I'm wearing right now for a really long time because I was freaked out by the Bluetooth that's constantly pinging my phone and the EMF that's being emitted. So what I have, protecting my environment, especially in my household and with my children, has become really, really important. And I've seen a major difference. So one of those is this pendant here. This is from Biogeometry. And I did a podcast with, I forget the gal's name. Her and her father run this company. And on this pendant are energy systems inside the body. So it's using shape and form to create harmony inside the body. I've got little, they have these harmonizing little sort of fiberglass pieces. This was studied. They did a study in the Swiss Alps. They put up these cell phone towers and everybody in the village got sick, like forgetfulness, nausea, weight gain, depression. And they went out to this place in the Swiss Alps and installed some of this technology using this like L90 pendant for those of you that are watching, and some of these designs, and it reduced everything kind of went back to normal. So I've got actually, this is right here. I've got shungite pyramid that I keep next to my electronics. I've got, Aries Tech.
And by the way, everybody, we aren't making any money off this. We're just like telling you what we love.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with affiliate stuff, but I wanted everyone to know, like, genuinely, I will be sending people to that podcast and these people's websites because I want to support business people.
Yeah.
Whether I'm making a cut on it or not, who are doing this work, because you don't get into this world if you're trying to make money. You go with something else. Like no one's like, you know what? I'm going to make my multi-millions in float tanks, guys. Like not what's happening. So sorry to interrupt you, but just wanted to let the listeners know.
Yeah. So the biohacks right now that I'm really, really hot on and conscious of.
What was the card you just showed?
So this is from Aries Tech, and this is basically an EMF diffusing hologram, and I just put it on my laptop. It's a plastic card. So I have stickers. I have this similar idea. These hologram stickers, and if you're watching, you can see this little sticker on my AirPod. It's a little hologram sticker that goes on your electronics. I have one on my cell phone, and these are from Wave Block. They do really good. So as far as like environmentally, I want to make sure that like my Wi-Fi router is off at night. At the bare minimum, my cell phone is not right next to my head in an airplane mode to make sure that I'm not just smashing myself with EMF all the time. Like I haven't owned a microwave in 15 years since college because even when it's off, it's emitting an electromagnetic frequency that can be harmful. So controlling for the around me part of the biohacking approach is really, really important. And the around me part also includes light exposure. So making sure that when I wake up in the morning, I have a whole bunch of bright light. It's dark when I get up. So I turn on a bright ring light to like wake up my senses. Also with this around me concept is I'm a huge fan of red light therapy. So I have, this is a red light that I use actually on my testicles.
Wow, that's a miniature one.
Yeah, these are teeny tiny. This is, again, I'm showing stuff for those of you who are listening. This is a red light unit for the males with the testicles, and it's red light for your nuts. And what it does is it boosts your hormones, and we're not walking around with loincloths anymore, exposed, with our boys exposed to the elements.
Balls to the sun.
Exactly. Right. And so that also is sort of encapsulated in this what's going on around me sort of idea. What goes on me. I use Dr. Bronner's, the light blue baby Dr. Bronner's for everything. For my face, I'll use apple cider vinegar. I don't use soap on my face. I'll use olive oil to moisturize my face. So what goes on me is really important. We don't use detergents with scents in them on my clothes. My bed cost a fortune and we saved up for it. But it's this like organic latex. That's again, this on me idea that the things that I'm exposed to, I want them to mimic nature as much as I can. So that's a really important idea. And then the stuff that goes in me, that's the supplements, that's high quality food. That's my dietary approach. So, you might be able to see behind me, I've got some sort of higher level biohacks. Like this is a B Strong band. It's blood flow restriction for exercise. I've got the X3 bar, which is band work, and that's all I do. There's also a meditation, basically a meditation enhancer called the Fisher-Wallace. And the Fisher-Wallace is electrostimulation to your temples while you meditate, and it helps depression and sleep. And they're going to be releasing a clinical trial here shortly. So and I'm looking at all these crystals and all this other stuff that's on my desk.
Well, if I can just add one thing, Sean.
Yeah.
There was I don't remember who said it, but it was the future of medicine will be sound and light. And there have been places in the world since time immemorial that healers have been going to soak themselves in sacred sounds, sacred geometry. And this is essentially what everything that you've described so far, that the subtle medicine, maybe this leads us, please finish where you were going, but where I definitely want to go before we end, which is the medicine of the future is also individualized. And I know you and I are both really on that same page, and it seems to be this new modern thing. And yet the ancients said, like, the teacher should sit before the student a blank slate. Like, this is the first encounter with the beauty of nature, like individualized apprenticeship, individualized medicine. There's a reason in Ayurveda, the first time you meet with a good Ayurveda coach, you talk for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and so I personally have always been saying this, but I think it's becoming so apparent now. We can't rely on the outside world to tell us how to take care of ourselves. And we only have this one lifetime. And my God, I'm 41. You're probably around that age. I don't know, we're probably of the same cohort. I've worked really hard to get this body. And my parents worked really hard to grow me up, right? And it's like, we're here. And I feel really excited about the kind of work that you're doing in the world and that I'm doing in the world, because it is what the ancients said. And that was, one must take radical responsibility for their health. And so maybe just whatever kind of spark that comes to you around individualized medicine and why that's going to be so important going forward.
Yeah, well, it takes work. Just like you said, if you want to be, you don't get a muscly, lean physique with a pill or injection. Like, you have to move, you have to eat right. The commitment that you can give to love yourself in that way, to care for your body, to really treat it as a conductor to higher realms of intelligence, head in the clouds and feet on the ground. This idea that we are connected, as above, so below. Like, if you want that, if you want to have a higher level of vibration and a higher level of consciousness, you've got to tune your body to that. And it can't happen through a pharmaceutical. It can't happen through, a quick fix. And so this alignment with the natural seasons of our lives and the natural seasons of the planet, that has to be, like you said, it has to be individualized. It has to be custom, and not just men or women, and not just men in their 40s or women in their 40s, but where you are right now. And so that can look something like, getting blood work done to understand your inflammatory markers or your detox pathways or your hormone panels. You have to know what's going on inside your body so that you can make better choices that are going to bring you more into homeostasis, because your body knows what to do. Your body knows how to bring itself into homeostasis. And we're just, with all these inputs, we're constantly fighting against that. And you're right. I believe the same thing, that the future of health optimization, because I think there's a distinction, because right, like allopathic medicine is great for car accidents.
Talking about something else.
Yeah, right. Like if you have a broken bone, you should go get it fixed at the hospital.
People, if your client has a broken bone, do not put turmeric on it. Like send them to a freaking hospital. Yeah.
But that's something totally different than health optimization. And to your credit, in Ayurveda, it is individualized. It is specific to that person. And so how we can build greater health and vitality, you have to be honest with yourself. What habits do I have that are working against my goals? What ways of thought do I have that are working against my goals? Am I consuming the right things that are the right for me? And how do I omit? I mean, I think for most people, it's like, how do I omit the things that are working against me? Same as alcohol, same as EMF in your house. Like, how can I reduce the stuff that's not working for me and include the things that will work for me? It's a process, but it's worth it, because once you get past, like, I don't know if anybody's listening right now that made the decision to like quit sugar. That is a bummer. That's like discomfort, agitation, stress, wacky sleep, headaches, sweats.
You're coming off a similar pathway as heroin.
Yeah, right. And that's not easy. But once you get past that place where you're like, oh, well, it's now 6 days in, the first 2 days weren't bad. 3, 4, and 5 were miserable. I'm on day 6 and 7. And now, like, I don't feel the need to just like grab a sugary snack and eat it. That it's worth it. And so it actually creates its own momentum as you make these subtle changes. And that's like, oh my gosh, like, I slept better. I'm not as agitated. Oh, I have more energy. Oh, I'm thinking more clearly. Like, I want to play with my kids now, or I want to go for a walk now, because those sorts of changes that you make are getting you closer and closer and closer to the most authentic expression of yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So it's a journey, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Really beautiful. Do you have time for one more question?
I got all the time.
Great. Let's talk about your Instagram I read this morning. I think our listeners would love this. So many men have a zinc deficiency because they're ejaculating too much. So many of the things that we learn in this whole sort of community that, I'm a part of and you're a part of, we call biohacking. It reminds me so much of these ancient teachings. It's so fun, right? And it's like finding that place where we get to be what I call tantric, right? You get to be in the enjoyment and in the, having a glass of wine with your beloved and really savoring it, and maybe having one, right? Like once a week. And I don't drink. I wouldn't call myself a drinker, but like every now and then I will. And I get crazy fun, because I'm like, half my family has actually like a shot glass that they'll bring out, and like that's the glass that my wine comes in. They're like, here's Katie's glass, and I'll just be like, let's party. And I'm like, wow, I can really feel why people like this. It feels so good, and to be able to enter into a relationship, like you mentioned psychedelics, we in tantric tradition, like you would go meditate on a dead body, right? To like have the experience of what arises through 360 degrees of life, whether it be death or orgasm. And so obviously I know you and I are on the same page with this. But I do think that like one of the things that I get reports on, having worked with literally thousands of women, is this disconnection that we feel with our men people and the realm of our sexuality. And that probably is a whole other podcast. And I'm getting a lot of ideas. I'm like, we need to have Sean actually do a course at the Shakti school. But let's just talk about that, like quickly, that specifically, without maybe going too deeply into like the deeper relational aspects, although we could, of what advice do you offer men when it comes to sexual health?
Save it up. Just save it up.
What
Save
happens? So Ayurveda says the same thing. Tantra says the same thing. And everybody got the download about the men, but they didn't get the download about the women. And so men are meant to save it up and women are meant to do something else. So I just want our listeners to know, biologically, we're not the same. Energetically, our chakras are actually one chakra, that the Hindu tradition that most of us have learned. And you guys have a different chakra system down there. And so when you release, you actually ejaculate down and out through what's called the apana vayu. So you get a downward facing triangle, energy leaves the body. When women ejaculate, it's a siphon, it's a spiral. It actually returns back into us. But here's the caveat. If the orgasm is achieved with love and safety.
Yeah.
If not, she loses energy through her emotional body. So, okay, sorry, needed to get a little bit that out of the way. So save it up. And so what have you experienced in yourself through saving it up and your clients?
Yeah, it's so much more meaningful. It's so much more rewarding. That idea of zinc deficiency through over ejaculation is something that I've been looking at for a long time. And I had John Gray, the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, on the podcast. We did a two-part episode, and to hear his journey to going over to India and celibacy and what he learned. I mean, even we don't need to get too graphic, but essentially,
no, you can do whatever you want here.
I mean, at some point he suggested, if you don't have a sexual partner, for men to ejaculate without looking at porn onto their stomach, and then rubbing the ejaculate over their stomach to reabsorb it. That's
a tantric teaching, and the women are meant to rub it into our skin, and that's like the biggest loss. And so, if I may add one thing.
Yeah.
You have 7 tissue layers: muscle, bone, fascia, fat. The most and it is a linear process that goes from food to muscle to fat to bone and the last tissue layer is semen. So the semen nutritionally is the most refined aspect of the food that you eat. And so my last podcast was with Kate Stillman. You would love it. It's about drinking your own urine. Well, semen and how that is so beneficial for you. Semen is like 10 times that. And so this is a funny thing. I'm not saying I do this. I'm not saying I might never, but like the tantric women that you see these photos of them where they're like 80-year-old women and they show them with their 14-year-old daughters, these women that are like fertile in their 80s. The technology is that you go and you find an 18-year-old boy and you drink his semen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make sure he's 18. All right. So sorry, I interrupted you, but I think
it's I mean, logistically for guys, it feels better. It means more. It enriches your relationship when you are not ejaculating to porn 3, 4, 5, 7, 12, 14 times a week. And John Gray goes on to talk about how ejaculation should happen once a week because it takes that long for us to replenish those stores. And
that's literally what Ayurveda says.
Right. And so being alone is really important for men. We need that time to like isolate and relax and to kind of deal with our stuff, by ourselves. And through we're totally on the same page. When you save it up, when you wait, your hormones are regulated and optimized. your intimacy is regulated and optimized. You know, for the guys who have lowered libidos or who are getting on in age and they just sort of cheaply, you know, masturbate and ejaculate to pornography, it's not real, it's not fun, it's cheap. You feel a lot of guys feel super guilty about it, whether they're in a relationship or not. It's just this like demeaning sort of process.
Yeah.
And so when you wait and you save it up, you retain that zinc. When you wait and save it up, you're actually looking forward to being with your partner. You're orienting your interactions for intimacy and for that moment where you can actually go be intimate with your partner and have a sexual experience. And that is such a powerful thing. That is our nature. That is who we are. We are not porn on a phone. That is not our sexuality. Our sexuality is to be shared and experienced within ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when
Beautiful.
it's a really, really big deal, especially for young men.
It could have been a whole podcast, I'm realizing, just on this topic. Like, it's such a serious thing. And #I'm single. And I've decided that I'm not doing the online dating thing because, for a number of reasons, it just didn't work for me. And I wasn't meeting the quality and caliber of man that even could begin to interface with what I've got going on. And I'm not saying I'm better than everybody else or anything. It was just not working. But one of the things that I sensed when I was dating and I would meet with these guys, it would, you know, I would hold a lot of space, you know, but I could literally feel, and women are tuned to this, I could feel the porn in their consciousness. It wasn't, how do I put this? It's hard to talk about that kind of level of sensitivity to what's in the astral field, right, of someone else, but I could really feel it. And I could sense the way there's something about porn that's actually preventing men from their own deepest pleasure, right? I'm kind of blanking on my thoughts right now. It's more of a sensation, but I can feel it, you know. And I guess the reason I'm blanking is because the feeling is grief in me. You know, that the loss of, like, one of the things that makes life most beautiful is our sexuality and you know, you and I'm sure are on the same page. It could be a lesbian or a homosexual relationship, but like, there's something about the yin and the yang as flows through men and women that I can just feel that loss. And I think a lot of it has to do with porn.
A lot of it does. And there are so many guys that have such limitations to their sexual expression because it's just quick and easy and cheap. And then afterward, they feel low, they feel guilty, oh God, it happened again. And that creates this massive disconnect from actual people in the world. It prevents that evolution of sexual interaction, but just intimacy, you know, just to like go slow, enjoy, be present with it.
Well, and I think what maybe we don't realize, and I include myself, I'm not saying I've seen porn very, very infrequently. You know, it's not like something that I experience very often, but like, I know that I can read statistics, and apparently porn, and I don't remember the exact number, but if you add up all news media sites and all sports sites on the internet, porn is 9 times more than all of those combined. So like, what the actual, right? And so I think like that's the level of the phrase I think is appropriate is brainwashing. Yeah. There's a reason why the yogis said, if you want to advance, avoid the things that disturb your mind, right? this knowledge of input. We've talked a lot about what we put in our body. Porn or whatever we're watching is a form of food. It's feeding the subtle sexual body. And so if you're constantly, I think a lot of men think, oh, I can just watch this and then I can be a good husband or a good boyfriend, or I can go date regular women. And it's like, actually you can't. Like, it's programming you for on the subconscious level for your expectation around an experience and a subtle subconscious relationality to women as objects.
I could not agree more. It's super, super duper damaging. It's
and I get it. Like, it's fun to watch. I get it. But you know what else is fun to do? Heroin. I've mentioned that. It's not like I've ever done it. Like, cocaine is really fun, right? Like, getting drunk is super fun, but like as a regular diet, it is called disease.
Yeah. It's not going to make you happy. It's not going to give you greater depth of relationship. It's not going to help you boost your hormones and be a strong, reliable, consistent fella. It's working against you. And the algorithms that are baked into these sites,
that's the word, right?
It's just like,
it's just like social
scary.
media. Now I'm learning, there's a great book Johan Hari just put out called Stolen Focus. Everybody should read that. If you read this book, you will have only one choice, and that is to be awake to the fact that your attention is actually being hijacked. But in this book, he talks about that inability that we have to actually stay with and be with one another because of these algorithms that are designed to get ever more intense. And so maybe what was like, oh, let's watch some fun, conscious 70s porn that's like mellow, or just naked bodies, it's all good, actually through algorithms can turn into like, you're abusing women, right? You're doing these really demeaning, abusive things that I'm shocked that like people can think that this abuse porn is like, oh, it's on the spectrum of sexuality and kink. And I'm like, no, it's like abusing women. Like, how did we get there, Sean?
Yeah, it's the bright side is that
let's get out of the trauma vortex.
Yeah, the bright side is that the moment that you decide that you are going to make some changes, or maybe even before that, when it's like, man, I think I got a problem. And I've helped guys get out of, 2, 3, 4 times a day addictions to porn.
Wow.
That once you recognize like, oh, this isn't like helping me. Okay, I might have a problem here. I got to put a plan together in place to make sure that I can move through this. You'll find how much better it feels, how much confidence you get from working through that and having that behind you, how much deeper your relationship is, how much more motivated you feel as a man, as a person, when that's no longer like running your life. And it happens quickly. It really does. Like the first like couple of weeks where you're like, no, I'm just going to abstain from it. I'm going to wait. I'm not going to look at porn today. It feels good. It feels, it boosts people's confidence. And so and so for anybody listening, guys or women, like it doesn't take that long to move past that addiction, that habit.
Yeah.
And once you do, if you have just a little bit of self-awareness and you can feel like, oh man, I'm sitting up a little straighter, like I have more energy today, that focusing on that and that progress that you're making out of it just improves your life and the life of the people around you.
And not to feel shame, dude.
Right.
I have my struggles. I love to eat chips in bed with the Netflix. And, we could talk about all my addictions and afflictions. I'm sure you've had a few and still struggle with stuff. The reason that great healer people, great health wellness people are so good at what we do is because we've struggled with it and maybe still do. And, so I just think relieving everyone of shame is so the first step. That's why I wanted to talk about it. It's like, so not talked about, and it is in the field. We're all picking up on it. Women out there who are listening are shaking their head yes, because you can feel your husband's porn habit. even if you don't quote know about it. You can feel these things on the subtle realm. We can feel one another, right? And like, if we were going to flip that story, like your man can feel when you are belittling him in your head. Like, even if you're not saying it, like we are not just verbal creatures, we're energy beings. Like we're picking up on these subtle cues. That's why I could, because I've refined my consciousness, I can feel porn in a man's field, right? But please don't have shame around any of these things. Like,
yeah,
it's not really our fault on some level. Like this is a whole social spin that we're all in this kind of sea of, that's intense. I mean, the internet is a bombshell on our culture.
Yeah, it's some practical advice for
please.
men and women around this, and this one's for the ladies. You know, make a plan and say, hey, let's do a date night. Wink, wink. Like Friday. Can you hold off for me till Friday? Because I want to do dinner. I want to hang out. I want to go for a walk. There's this idea of having sex first before you go out to dinner, so that you can be around each other. What is it?
Not full.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. What's Savage? I forget his first name. He just says fuck first. You can bleep that out if you want, but fuck first.
Yeah, we're fine with cuss.
Connect intimately, look forward to it throughout the week and say, okay, it's on Friday night. Just like, can you wait? Can you hold off for me for Friday? That's such a subtle way to signal to your male partner, like, I want you, I'm thinking about you, just hold off for me. Like, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And then you're both looking for it. You're looking forward to it. And obviously I know, and through experience, that foreplay starts days before. It's not 5 minutes before, it's days before. It's like, cleaning, like doing the dishes in the sink. It's, it's making the bed, it's organizing things around the house. That's something that will please her, that she's going to be excited for. And
yours are lady porn.
It is. It's true. Like doing that little stuff, like, okay, so we're both thinking about it. We're both looking forward to it. Flowers are fine, but what can I do around the house? Or what, can I reach out and touch her back when we're standing there together? Those are little things to kind of get you flowing and looking forward to Friday. And it takes being vulnerable to do that, to like drop your guard down and get over yourself just for like a week. It's Monday. Hey, let's do date night Friday. Wink, wink. Like, I want to look forward to it. Can you hold off for me? Like, maybe he knows what that means, or maybe there's a more subtle way to say that, but then it's like, it's in your consciousness. You're both on the same page. You're both looking forward to it. And it's going to be a much more meaningful experience for both of you. And for the guys, one suggestion that I would say is, all you've got to do is look at those sort of triggers, so if you're on Twitter, if you're on Instagram and you follow accounts that include like women in bikinis, that is going to be a trigger for you. Totally. To like look for an opportunity to go do your thing by yourself. And so minimize that exposure. Again, going back to like this dopamine idea, that's self-love, and that self-love is going to be so enhanced by love with your partner. So like, yeah, right. Like, stop the triggers, relax it, give yourself a little break. You're in this life with this woman. You've chosen her. She's chosen you. So focus on that for a week and watch how much closer and how much more fun and how much life enrichment you get from putting that at the center of your focus.
Yeah, you're making me think of two things from the ancient teachings. One is that the Tantra of sexuality was vast and complex. And one of the techniques they used was, when you're with your partner, you actually design your home around sex. So I would have my lady chamber and my man would have his man cave. And that is so like good and in alignment with men are from Mars, women from Venus, right? They knew this stuff back then. You don't sleep with your man all week, right? And so your man would have his cave time, and that would build up the testosterone. And they said it for a month, but we could say it for a week, right? And so you would spend that whole week flirting. he would buy her little gifts. She would do these little touches on the shoulder. You would whisper naughty things in each other's ears. She might bring in some luscious dates that remind him of a certain body organ. Like there would be these like subtle hints all throughout the week. And I'm getting turned on just saying it, right? Like, it's like, oh my God, like we're having this sexual experience all week that does not involve intercourse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the weekend, let's go back to the month long. You would do this all month long. And then for 3 days, there would be a middle chamber of the home. Obviously, these were hashtag privileged people, right? Like you have a middle chamber of the home and you wouldn't leave for 3 days.
Wow.
You would have passionate sex for 3 days because you've been building up all these hormones. That kind of man can be there in that way, right? Like not that, and they're very hyperbolic in India about these techniques, but just your thing of 1 week, use that as the whole week is foreplay. And then maybe we have this one Sunday afternoon of like bliss where we got a babysitter. We made the beautiful space with candles and music. And it is vulnerable to do that. It's a lot easier to just roll over and like have an encounter and everybody get off like that. I'm not interested in that anymore. And I think a lot of people, right, but especially women, were just, I always say, we know, and maybe we'll share this with the men folk, like women know the secret. And that is we are capable of levels of orgasmic experience that our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers probably never knew.
Mm-hmm.
In their experience, but we know it on a DNA level, on a soul DNA level. I know that I'm capable of an orgasmic experience that my ancestors didn't have the opportunity to even experience, right?
Yeah.
And men are the catalyst for that. And women were considered to be the gatekeepers of the sexual experience. And so in the classic example in the list, Estrada, women were like, look, until we stop these, we can think of our current world, ridiculousness in our world, nobody's going to have sex. And all of a sudden, all the tyranny and all the like completely ended because all the women were like, no cookie, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that it makes me think of is, and we're talking about men and women because I'm comfortable doing that because that's what my tradition speaks of. But obviously you guys who are out there listening that identify as non-binary, like you adjust, but you're still the yin and the yang, right? We're still this going to be one dominant force. And the sacrifice of not watching porn or the sacrifice of other things, the ancient teachings call that tapas, that you heat yourself by giving up something that would feel really good in the moment. And in that heat, you get an end result, which is called tejas, which the ancients teach and say it's the radiant splendor of a man's personality that has the capacity to melt her heart. But it's not just her, it's charisma. It has the capacity to melt all hearts. And then that's when he starts working with this idea of the goddess, of bringing in power and money and prestige and fame and health and all these good things that we all want come from sacrifice.
Yeah. That's awesome. I feel like I just got a lesson there. Those are such profound ideas. And it really does kind of tie our whole conversation together. When you show a little bit of restraint, when you show a little bit of discipline, when you love yourself in this way that you haven't been loving yourself before, by holding off and waiting and slowing down, that elevates everything.
Everybody.
I mean, everything, your community, the universe, when you can sort of grow up a little bit and be mature and be strong and be good to yourself, love yourself in this way, love yourself in this commitment to doing good for you and for others. And then good ideas come forward, and then more discipline and more productivity and less stress comes out of all of this stuff. Yeah. It's and
here's the tantric secret, if I may, the tantric secret for men. When you start to serve the goddess, that doesn't just mean doing whatever for your woman, but when you do these types of things you and I've been talking about this whole hour, you're serving your own inner light, your own inner goddess. But when you serve her, she multiplies it back on you tenfold. And if we do take that into the relational realm, I know for me, a man that's like fully showing up for himself and then fully showing up for me, there's nothing I want to do more than to serve that man, right?
Yeah.
That's this like magical thing that I know I really want to do. It's like the divine geisha can come out to play, but not if you're not in that place of being able to hold it down for yourself. And
Right.
yeah, well, this has been bananas, and I'm going to be shooting you an email like later this week. I really think we need to co-create something together. And
Cool. That sounds like, I would love that.
Let's talk about sex and relationship and men. And like, we really do want to bring this in. We've had such a beautiful school, but we're opening it up now to men in these beautiful ways. Sean, what do you have coming up? Do you want to let anybody know about anything? Obviously, we'll put your website in the bio, but tell us where people can find you. Because I know so many women are gonna be like, oh my God, honey, you have to listen to this one. Everyone's like, Katie, I keep telling my man about you. And men need to hear this stuff from men and women, but really they can hear you better.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't tell you how many coaching clients I've worked with who their wives have said, I saw this guy do a thing, or I listened to this guy's podcast, or, I just liked what he was saying on his website. Some of them have even gone as far as to like schedule. I do a coaching strategy session. That's 30 to 40 minute sort of intake. They'll actually like schedule it and put it on their calendar and say, you're going to talk to this guy. He's cool. Don't worry. So yeah, it's funny that you say that because that does happen fairly frequently. So yeah, you can go to SeanMcCormick.com, SEAN. It's in the show notes, SeanMcCormick.com, or Real Sean McCormick on Instagram. My podcast is the Optimal Performance Podcast. If you haven't caught Katie's episode, go listen to it. It's so good, man. We got far fast, just like this conversation.
Yeah, even more.
Yeah. So yeah, coaching, I love it. It's my bread and butter. I'm launching a custom health optimization platform. It's, I'm going to be ad tech founder to the title here in a couple of months. But if you listen to the Optimal Performance Podcast, I'm going to drive, you'll know where to go for that stuff. But I just want to say thank you for, you've been doing such great work in your realm, and now to like open it up and say, okay, what does the world need? What does my community need? And now to include men and to open it up in an authentic way. And for me to be the first is an honor. And I love what you're doing, and I'm stoked to participate. Thank you for having me.
Wow. Thank you. That means a lot more than even know to me. So yeah, I believe that the medicine of the future is beyond light and sound. People need to see women and men interacting with one another in deep love and respect. And that's so great that you were the first guy, because you're just such an easy human to be with. And I love your heart, and thank you for your work in the world, Sean. I'm sure this will be the beginning of an ongoing conversation between us, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Katie.
फूटे फूल